Good evening, everybody. Welcome. Good evening, everybody. We will get started in just a couple of minutes. We'll let some folks trickle in. Thank you all for coming tonight. Happy Thursday. Good evening, everybody. I think we will get started, and if people trickle in, Zeus can let them in. All right, thank you everybody for coming tonight. My name is Robert Kearns. I am the Climate Resilience Specialist here at the Charles River Watershed Association. I'm joined by Brian Antonelli, DPW Director in the Town of Wrentham, Rachel Benson, Director of Planning and Community Development for Town of Wrentham, as well as Zeus Smith, Policy Advocate for the Charles River Watershed Association, as well as Andy Walker, professional hydrologist and certified flood manager from Weston Sampson. So these are some of the members of the project team. And we're very happy that you all are joining us tonight for our meeting on Eagle Dam. We just want to start off the evening with a land acknowledgement. And here at CWA, we humbly recognize the Massachusetts, Wampanoag, Nipmuc nations as the past, present, and future caretakers of the land that our work carries upon, their traditional territory. And just wanted to highlight that we are committed to creating respectful engagements and relationships with the Indigenous peoples in our watershed to learn, uplift, and support their relationships with the river. Also want to start out with some ground rules for our meeting tonight. Number one, this is an informational meeting. The purpose of the event is to learn more about the project and answer folks' questions that people may have. Please be respectful of the speakers and hold your questions for the Q&A sections. Some questions may be answered through the presentations. Everyone is encouraged to participate and has the opportunity to ask questions via the chat. We ask that one person ask a question at a time. Staff will repeat the questions from the chat into the record, so you can message Zeus and he will be able to have the questions for the question and answer part of the presentation. And if possible, please focus questions on the presentation and the results of the flood modeling. However, we will work best to answer questions either in the meeting or after the meeting in writing. Additionally, before you ask multiple questions, we ask that you refrain and let another person ask a question. And the project team may respectfully enforce these ground rules. And at past meetings, we've had, like on Monday, we had some extra time. So I think we'll be okay for asking questions if people have second questions or third questions. And then if people have any technical issues, please call Zeus. His phone number is 971-280-7685. All right, so just give some context. Here in the Commonwealth, there are over 3,000 dams, many of which are relics of history and serve no purpose, similar to Eagle Dam in Wrentham. And in the past 12 years, over 60 dams have been removed in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, opening up over 300 miles of free-flowing river and creating 13 jobs for every $1 million spent on these projects. So it's really an economic driver for communities in the Commonwealth. And this map shows all the regulated dams here in the Commonwealth, and the different colors represent the different hazard classification for the dams. And not going to dwell on this too much, but just want to highlight that we're seeing stronger storms with climate change, more intense rainfall, and more rain, as well as periods of drought. And really the dams, like Eagle Dam, have not been built to the safety standards of today and really for the storms of today and tomorrow. And we're seeing a lot more of these events, as you can see pictures from past floods. And then just want to highlight, you may be wondering, is our dams like Eagle Dam bad for the environment? The answer is yes. The main point is that dams limit habitat. Fish and wildlife that use the water as their habitat are fragmented by the dam. They can't get from the downstream to the upstream or upstream to the downstream. And the dams degrade water quality. They hold back the water, impound it, slow it down, which can lead to lower dissolved oxygen levels, as well as higher temperatures. Also, it can trap nutrients and sediments behind the dam. And all this can lead to negative impacts to water quality. additionally, we can see some erosion downstream of dams. Another thing to consider for the town is that dams are costly for maintenance and repairs. And this dam is obviously owned by the town, which is responsibility of the taxpayers in Wrentham, and the town has to pay for regular dam safety inspections every few years and comply with recommendations and pay for routine repairs and maintenance. And often dam removal is less expensive and is a one-time cost that eliminates any liabilities the town will have. And dams are a strict liability, meaning that if there were any damages caused by downstream by failure, the town would be liable as the dam owner. Additionally, there are a lot of state and federal funding sources available to support dam removal projects. Like I said, one-time cost, and eliminate the liability and restore the river and stream corridor in one go, which is a great opportunity. I'm not going to read all of the funding sources, but they are there if people are interested. In going back to our land acknowledgement, just want to highlight that the dams have been negatively impacting traditional food source for Indigenous peoples, and historically and today, Indigenous peoples have been calling for the deconstruction of dams, the removal, restoration of rivers, and petitioning against the construction of dams that have impacted their traditional food sources, and they're really a legacy of colonization. You may be wondering, are there precedent for dam removals in the Charles River? Answer is yes. This is one on the main stem of the river, so it's obviously a much larger river than Eagle Brook, which is a tributary to the Charles. But this was back in 2017. The town of Bellingham worked with the state to remove their dam that they owned in Bellingham. So this was the last one that was back in 2017. And over the course of the past 100 years, over 10 dams in the main stem of the Charles River have been breached or removed since colonization. You may be wondering, are there examples similar to Eagle Dam, where you can look at the dam before and after and see what it looks like? And the answer is yes. This is up in Pepperell, Massachusetts, on Sucker Brook. It's a town-owned dam, so similar to Eagle Dam, in a conservation area. So the town owned the whole area around it. And it's a public park. You can go up there. I highly recommend it. And as you can see, they removed the dam. This is an image from the same location where the dam was. For the spillway of the dam, or the waterfall, as people may colloquially know. This is after, and you can see that the once the dam was removed, the impoundment of the mill pond behind it turned into a naturally flowing river, as well as with bordering vegetated wetlands, as well as wet meadows. So there's the wetlands resource would change from land underwater or the mill pond to a more natural stream with plants around it. And this is after it. So it's not going to be a mud pit. And there's a lot of examples of this down in Plymouth. They've done dam removals. So there's a place you can go and see what it looks like if people are interested. So zooming in on Eagle Dam, like I was saying, it's owned by the town. It's a low hazard potential structure in unsafe condition from the latest dam inspection last year by the Pear Corporation. And part of the reason why it's in bad shape is because there's trees growing in and on top of the dam, as well as vegetation, which is against the dam safety policy. And additionally, it was identified by the town's municipal vulnerability preparedness program plan as a liability, and why the town has looked to get the grant to look into potentially removing the structure. Here's a timeline of Eagle Dam through the years and history. And this, I'm not going to read all this, but we will provide the slides. Just some of the highlights. Historically, there were Atlantic salmon migrating all the way up to Eagle Brook from the ocean, which really blows my mind. There's history of industry in the area with various mills at the site, as well as instances where the dam has breached in previous storms. And more recently, in 2021, the town worked with ESS Group and CRW to do a feasibility study of potentially removing the dam. And now we're doing further studies to look into potentially removing the structure. Obviously, no decision on the future dam has been made, but this is just sort of a information gathering phase. And speaking of which, the flood back in 1875, here's some images down from Norfolk At City Mills, if people are familiar, Main Street in Norfolk, major damage when Eagle Dam broke that year and washed out the Franklin Line Railroad upstream of City Mills. And on the Town of Norfolk, they have a plaque here by City Mills talking about this in the picture there. And also on the town's website, it mentions that the dam breach at Eagle Dam nearly drowned Edwin Alonzo Morse as he was swept away in a mass of mud, railroad ties, and rails before being rescued by Owen Shields, a railroad tracksman. So it's a really interesting history there of failure. Here's some images from when after the dam breached in the 70s and in the 60s due to tree rot. Some more pictures after the dam was breached, different areas. See the water levels lower. So you may be wondering, is the dam just the spillway of the dam or the waterfall that people may colloquially say? And the answer is no, it includes all of the earthen embankment or the earthen part of the dam. And this is a sketch from the inspection report, just highlighting that it's not just where the water comes over the spillway there. And you can see all the different trees that are on the dam. And here's some images of the from the inspection report of the erosion on the dam and the extensive trees on the earthen part of the dam. You see crack in the spillway and seepage through the dam, earthen part of the dam, which shows that it's in unsafe condition. Getting to the feasibility study, just want to highlight as a part of that study, sediment samples were taken upstream of the dam in the impoundment or mill pond and sent to a lab for analysis, which did not find any concentrations of concerns of contamination for public health and the environment. So that's really good news. Additionally, the town, after the feasibility study, they hired environmental partners who are working on the well and water supply next to Eagle Dam to look at any impacts of removing the dam would have on the town's water supply. And environmental partners found that there would not be any measurable impact to the water supply wells. The wells source groundwater from a large area, including Lake Archer and Lake Pearl. Here's all the purple area is the area that the zone 2 where the water comes to the wells, which includes, like I said, Lake Pearl, Lake Archer, as well as past 4. This pink line is 495, so past 495. So this whole area, all the water seeps in through here, gets into where the wells are sucking up the water. So it's not just from the little Eagle Pond, which is just like where my cursor is there. So now I just want to highlight some of the work we've done with Weston and Sampson to further look at flooding in the watershed. And Andy's going to talk a little bit more about this. We've been working with Weston Sampson for a couple of years now on the Charles River flood model, which is a computer model that predicts where flooding will occur under future climate scenarios and identifies and tests nature-based solutions and how it can reduce flooding impacts. And additionally, at this phase of the model, we've been looking at stream crossings for fish and wildlife passes. Here's an image on the left here of doing that and really, and this is Eagle Dam. We're doing a subset looking at flood modeling, which Andy will describe, looking at flooding in the Eagle Brook watershed, sub-watershed. So from Lake Pearl downstream to Norfolk. So with that, I will pass it off to Andy to talk more about that awesome project that they've been working on the past few months.
Hey everybody, I'm Andy Walker, Sampson. Sharing my screen. You guys see my screen? Great.
Yeah, looks great.
So yeah, Andy Walker spearheaded development of the Charles River flood model 2 years ago, and we've been working with it ever since. As Robert mentioned, the most recent work we've done with the model is to evaluate the changes in flood conditions in Eagle Brook if Eagle Dam were to be removed. I'll just speak for a few minutes on kind of give an update on that work we've been doing. Give a very quick overview of the Charles River flood model for folks that aren't totally familiar with it. We'll talk about some of the updates we made specific to this project and all the different model scenarios that we looked at to evaluate flooding in Eagle Brook, and then what those results were and what that means for the project. Very brief overview. the Charles River flood model represents about 272 square miles of the Charles River watershed, all the way down past the Watertown Dam. Encompasses parts of 35 different communities, 15 of which have been partners in model development and working with the model. Hundreds of subbasins, dozens of tributaries, nearly 200 miles of the Charles River and its tributaries, and 450 bridges or culverts, and over 100 dams, including Eagle Dam. At the bottom, I'm sure this is a presentation we made available, but at the bottom is a link to a nice story map that goes into much more detail about how the model was developed and what it can be used for. So you're welcome to click that when you get the digital version of the presentation. The Charles River flood model was developed, like I said, for a very large watershed. But because we wanted to study some of the more specific impacts on Eagle Brook, we wanted to update the model and make sure that it had enough detail in that area. So we went out into the field, we gathered a bunch more data, and then we updated some of the model components, and also refined. So there's this 2D mesh that kind of sits over the rest of the model, and that's the 2D model, the 2D mesh rather, is what floods as a result of rainfall events. That's sort of the output of the model. So we made that much more extensive, as you'll see in a minute. We added some more storm events, and of course we created a dam out version so that we could compare and contrast flooding with the dam in place as it is now, or if the dam were to be removed. With regard to field work, we visited a number of sites. We went out to an area about 4 miles long from Lake Pearl all the way down to Main Street in Norfolk. We used sort of a handheld GPS unit to survey dozens of spot elevations up and down that reach. Very accurate little unit, generally within about an inch. We visited 11 different structures. I think there's a list on the next slide for those that are interested. But this image here gives a good idea of the types of things we were measuring, right? So we visited the Route 140 crossing and took elevations of the bridge opening on either side. We took a sort of representative cross section of the reach in between the dam and the roadway. And then we also took a number of shots along the dam's crest and spillway and the toe of the dam, as well as further upstream on the other side of the pond at Lake Pearl. But that's not all. We visited, like I said, we visited many sites. Here's a list of the exact locations if you're interested. We were just looking at just this tiny little area, but we actually visited as far up here as Lake Pearl, and then also at several locations in the downstream area, paying particular attention to downstream dams and road and rail crossings, as well as homes that were identified as within or very close to the floodplain, just to make sure we had a really accurate sense of where those buildings were located in relationship to the floodplain. So some of the updates we made, right? We took that field data and we updated the river, the channel shape, to make sure that the cross section that represents the river at a number of locations was as accurate as can be. We also updated the definitions for dams, making sure we had their elevations correct and sort of the relationship between the spillway and the dam crest. We also updated some of the bridge and rail crossings as well with the more accurate information. And we actually added the Wrentham Anglers Club dam that was not in the original model. It's a relatively small structure and just sort of didn't make the cut into the original model with the time available. But we've added it because it's the next downstream dam, so it's important to understand how the removal of Eagle Dam might impact it. So we've included that now. And then we extend, like I said, we sort of extended the 2D mesh and increased the resolution of it. This is what that looks like. So the 2D mesh I'm talking in the original model is all these little yellow polygons. And then what we updated, the updated condition of the green polygons. So you can see not only did we cover a much sort of a broader floodplain, just so we could make sure we were capturing all the flooding impacts as far out as we needed to, but also there's a lot more polygons, so we've got much finer output. You can tell in each cell what the simulated flood level would be under certain design storms. So not only do we update sort of the model geometry, but we added a number of storm events as well. The original model had a 2-year, 10-year, and 100-year storm event under both a baseline climate as well as a 2070 climate. In addition, we added a 50-year storm and a 500-year storm, just to sort of fully flesh out the range of storm events, and so we can study how the removal of Eagle Dam might affect the downstream reach of Eagle Brook under a wide range of conditions. And then, of course, we created a dam out version. There's lots of different ways to design a dam removal. We opted to keep it relatively simple. So we imagined that basically a hole would be cut right through the middle of the dam, taking out its spillway as well as a portion of its embankment. So a total width cut of about 25 feet, which is the approximate bankful width of the channel immediately downstream. Basically, the dam would no longer be a restriction to flow. And we ran 10 different design storms, right? Like I mentioned, the 2, 10, 50, 100, and 500-year 24-hour storm events. And we did that for both baseline climate and 2070 climate scenarios. So 10 different storm events. And of course, we looked at dam in and dam out. So 20 total model simulations. And we evaluated impacts, like I said, over about 4 miles of Eagle Brook. We paid particular attention to crossings, like bridges and rail crossings, as well as downstream dams. And like I said, buildings that are near the floodplain. Of course, we looked at the whole 4 miles, but we paid particular attention to some of the nearer structures, like we've highlighted here. I won't speak too much on Lake Pearl. Spoiler alert, there's no impact to flows coming out of Lake Pearl if Eagle Dam are removed because it's downstream. But we also pay particular close attention to the Route 140 crossing, State Highway, both the upstream and downstream faces of it, as well as the Wrentham Anglers Club Dam. A bit of a misnamed here, but at the Anglers Club Dam, a little bit downstream. And here let me share some of the results that we found. So let me orient everybody. You can see we've got 5 baseline climate or 5 present day climate scenarios and 5 2070 scenarios. And here are the different recurrence intervals. So we look at 2, 10, 50, 100, and 500 for both climate conditions. And then this column is the peak, the maximum water level at Eagle Dam. So right at the dam, so right in the impoundment, this is the maximum water surface during those design storms with a dam in place. So the existing condition. And then this column here is with the dam removed. And the most important column here is the change. So you can see all these are negative numbers, and they range from about 1/10 of a foot to about 6/10 of a foot. And so what this indicates is that, as you might expect, if you take the dam out, the peak water level in the impoundment or in the former impoundment would be lower with a dam out versus dam in. So that makes sense. And this is sort of the order of magnitude. This is the magnitude of the change, so less than a foot. Move just a little bit further downstream, the upstream face of the Route 140 crossing. And now you see that change has gone to nothing. There's no change. The model's telling us is that there's no change in the peak water level during any of these storms, with one exception, which is the 2070 500-year event. So the most extreme storm we looked at, there's an increase, there's a simulated increase in the maximum water surface of about 0.02 feet, so a fraction of an inch. You go just to the other side of the bridge, the downstream face of the Route 140 crossing, and now it's all zeros. So downstream of Route 140, we see no impacts, no change in the peak water surface elevation with the dam out versus dam in. Keep going downstream. Now we're at the Wrentham Anglers Club Dam. Again, no change. And this trend continues all the way down to Main Street in Norfolk. Downstream of Route 140, there's zero change during any design storm, any climate condition with regard to peak flood level in Eagle Brook if Eagle Dam were removed. And that might sound a little bit counterintuitive. You think you take a dam out, it's got all this great storage capacity, you should see an impact downstream. And I think I'll walk through this graphic, but I think it does a good job of describing why that's that might be intuitive, but in this case it's wrong. So what we see here, there's two pairs of curves, and these curves represent the flow rate coming down from the dam and arriving at the Route 140 crossing. So on the x-axis, this is time. So the start of the storm is all the way to the left, and as time continues, the storm gets more and more intense, and then the storm recedes, but the Eagle Brook is still flowing, and it takes a day or two for Eagle Brook to start to come back down. And on the y-axis is flow, cubic feet per second. And so what you see here, the green curves, there's two green curves and two blue curves. The two green curves are the 100-year storm, and the two blue curves are the 50-year storm. And the difference between them is the light blue is, so that's a 50-year storm with the dam out, and the dark blue is with the dam in. And you can see that I'm sorry, I've reversed that. Dark blue is with the dam out, and light blue is with the dam in. And so you can see with the dam out, there are higher flows early in the storm, but by the time you get to the peak of the storm, whatever storage capacity was behind the dam when it was in place was used up. So by the time you get to the peak of the storm, the difference between dam in versus dam out conditions has gone to nothing. And that's also true for the 100-year. Right, so yes, with the dam out, the flow rate arriving at Route 140 is larger in the early hours of the storm, but by the time you get anywhere near the peak flooding, those differences have sort of gone to nothing, and they are identical. And the other way we can look at what the model results are telling us is in that 2D mesh I described. You can see here, so on the left is the 100-year, the baseline climate 100-year storm. On the left is existing conditions with dam in. On the right is with a dam out. And you can look back and forth. The darker the blue, the deeper the flooding. So you can see no difference in which 2D cells are showing as inundated or in the depth of flooding. So no difference between the two images. I swear they're not exactly the same. They are different screenshots, I promise. But they look identical. So just to recap, right, we developed the Charles River flood model 2 years ago, study flooding throughout the watershed. We've updated it now in support of this project to look at the potential impacts of the Eagle Dam removal on flooding on Eagle Brook. And what we found is that no change in water levels or flow rates coming out of Lake Pearl. There is some impact to water levels in the Eagle Dam impoundment naturally, always less than a foot for all the design storms we looked at. Flood water levels at Route 140 generally will not change at all. There's one exception, like I mentioned, it's the 2070 500-year. There's a very small increase, less than 0.02 feet at the upstream face of the dam, but at the downstream face of, at the upstream face of that bridge, but at the downstream face of that bridge and anywhere downstream, the model's telling us is no increase in peak flood levels, so no increase in impacts to infrastructure, to road and rail, to dams, to homes, no increase. And so based on the modeling work we've done, and of course, I should say that Route 140 is a state crossing, so later this month we will be coordinating with Mass DOT just to bring them on board and sort of update them on the findings of this analysis. But the key takeaway here is that the removal of Eagle Dam has a lot of hydrologic and hydraulic benefits, and with regard to flooding and flooding impacts, the removal of Eagle Dam would not have any impacts at Route 140 or beyond. And I'll leave it there.
So thank you, Andy. I think it's kind of nice to see the data because the dam is not a flood controlled structure. Like other dams do serve purposes like flood control or water supply, but this one doesn't. So it's sort of good context. So, and thank you for all those awesome results in the all the modeling work you guys have done. I'm going to share my screen real quick. All right. You all see it?
Yes.
All right. So thank you all for coming. We're going to get right to the Q&A section right now. But before that, I want to put a plug for our survey. If you haven't filled it out, or if you have and your neighbors haven't, or your friends or your family members, please check it out. It's on bit.ly/Eagle Dam. And I will put it in the chat real quick. Additionally, we have a website on CWA's website, which has information on this project, dam removal, as well as the town's website, which I will put in the chat as well. So definitely please fill out the survey and let people know about it, because it'll be helpful. And then also, if you have any other questions, feel free to send it to planning@wrentham.gov. That will go to the project team. And we are going to be going to questions, or Rachel, we should go to you first for next steps, or we do that after? I guess we can do now.
Sure, why not?
All right.
Well, so thank you everybody for coming. This is the last of 3 remote meetings we've had, and then we had 2 in-person meetings, one in January and then one in April, was it? I think when the weather was nicer, much nicer than February or January. So again, yeah, as Robert had said, that the town hasn't made any decisions as of yet. We're still gathering data. We have more questions that have come up as part of this feasibility study, as well as, questions that have come from, residents. So keep them coming. You have my email address, planning@wrentham.gov. And that'll be shared with everybody. And we can, again, if you don't think of it now, it was a lot of information. Feel free to email me later, and we can send it out to the project team and get your answer.
Awesome. Thank you, Rachel. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and we will go to Q&A, because everybody is starting to send them in. Thank you all. Thank you, everybody. Can do the first one, and then I'll have Zeus moderate. All right, first one's from Kelly Van Roon. If there's no impact on Route 1, if there's no impact on Route 140, impact from flooding of removal of dam, as Andy indicated, why wouldn't it be removed? Let me read that again. If there's no impact on Route 140 from flooding of removal of dam, why would it be removed? Do you want me to answer that, Andy?
Yeah, it's more about all the ecological impacts.
Well, I think it's a 2-part question. So it's
well, hydraulically, there's no increase in impacts to Route 140 as a result of the dam removal. And you might be alluding to the fact that there's no overtopping of Route 140 during these design storms. So if there's no flooding of Route 140 under existing conditions, why remove the dam? And I think that speaks to all the benefits of dam removal that Robert mentioned. If you want to,
yeah, and I think the other thing I want to highlight, Andy, is that you all did not do any modeling for dam failure. That's correct. That scenario.
That is correct.
So I think the conclusion is, if the dam is operating as it is, there's no change in flooding downstream. However, it's a little complicated because the dam is in poor condition. So that means that there has to be changes in either scenario, whether the dam is repaired or removed. So if the dam is to be repaired, it'd be major reconstruction. They'd have to rebuild the whole spillway, replace it. This is documented in the inspection report. And they'd also have to rebuild the earthen embankment, take all the trees and all of the vegetation off of that embankment. So it'd be a whole new structure essentially. So in that scenario, you'd create a whole new dam. And so I think that's it. And so it's more of a question of what the community wants to do. And it's going to be up to you all and the town meeting and the select board thinking about, does the town want to continue to operate and maintain a dam that's going to look different, or do they want to eliminate that liability and just have Red Dam, because the Red Dam also needs to be repaired. So I think it's number one, a dam breach was not analyzed, and number two, it's more about thinking about the liabilities of the town and future operations and maintenance, plus the ecological benefits of removal. So I hopefully that answered the question, because none of the modeling was looking at if the dam failed and there's a big wave of water coming downstream. That hasn't been done. So I don't know if you have a follow-up, please send it in. All right, I'm getting more chat questions. All right, next one from Monica Sheasley. If the dam is removed, the area around is still considered wetlands and can't be built around, correct? Great question, Monica. Number one, the area, the impoundment or the mill pond is owned by the town of Wrentham, and it's within the area of the wells. So number one, the town owns that land. So anything to do with future would be up to the town. And it would change from land underwater to bordering vegetated wetland or another wetland resource. So yes, likely could not be built around, although there have been discussions, I know, in the town about potentially doing a trail or a boardwalk type of system that would have to go through wetlands permitting to get more access to Lake Pearl via that corridor. So I know that's been talked about. There's no finalized. Obviously, that'd have to be a whole nother process, working with the neighbors in the neighborhood and just the town, because that'd have to be funded. So yeah, nothing like you wouldn't be able to build a structure. Rachel, I don't know if you want to add anything there.
Correct. There wouldn't be a structure because there is, and again, Brian, he's the DPW director. He probably knows more about water. Because it's so close to our well 3, there can't actually be a structure there. Mass DEP has very strict regulations on wells and what you can do within certain areas outside of the well. Sorry, Brian. I'm your new assistant DPW director.
You're hired. To piggyback on that, if the entire pond is, real simple answer, you are correct. There can be absolutely no building whatsoever on that. It actually goes a step further, which Mass DEP, within the zone 1 of a drinking water well, which is the 400-foot diameter around that well, the only things that can be done in that area is water related directly. So you could not have, people can't be in there in a canoe if it's within the 400 feet of that building. And if that's currently the case, then that's an appropriate use. These are not Wrentham rules. These are not my rules. These are state mandates to protect drinking water supplies. And also, on a side, earlier you were talking about removing, if the dam were to be removed and you showed where the aquifer is and all that. But an important thing to stress is whether it's Lake Pearl, or whether it's the impoundment behind Eagle Dam, any that the well is does not use surface water to draw to draw water from it. It all comes from the underground glacial aquifer, which the bodies of water above it do help with recharge. But the Eagle Dam, that body of water is mostly within zone 1, meaning that recharge is minimal, because when a well sucks water down, it's drawing from the bottom of the casing, and it acts like a cone. So the closer you are to that well, the less likely you're drawing it. You're drawing it from the outside coming in. And that's why the zone 2 is really the main recharge area, which is why EP has made the determination that, in fact, it would not have an effect on the wells. And we are very comfortable with that assessment. Mass DEP was out looking at the well recently, and we let them know what was going on, and they had no concerns as well. So, but long way to say you are correct. There can be no building should it be removed.
So thank you both. Zeus, you want to do the next question? You muted.
Sure. So yeah, the next question that we got was by Lisa, I believe. And it was noting that none of the abutters want the dam removed and the pond drained, and that, the abutters keep hearing, don't worry, nothing has been decided, but there have been several meetings, and there's a sense that citizens may not truly have a voice. And the question is, ultimately, do the citizens truly have a say? And if so, how do we constructively and productively exercise our voices? So
I can.
Yeah, you want to go ahead?
Okay. So I can answer that question, Zeus.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely hear your concerns. And we've heard concerns from residents and abutters at every meeting, and we're taking notes. Zeus and I are diligently taking notes, as well as recording everything from the survey. So definitely recommend people, fill out the survey, keep coming to meetings, keep asking the questions. And I would say you all do have a voice, and there will be a public process. And how to exercise your voices, I'd say keep coming to meetings, talk to your local officials. And keep coming back, keep coming to meetings, and keep letting people know about the meetings, and also let people know about the survey. But I would say, nothing has been decided. I mean, and I can tell that honestly. And as Rachel was saying, there are more questions that need to be answered on a technical level too for this. So there has to be more information. So it's not, and also with the process, if the town decides to go, it'd have to be another formal process for further design, as well as further work on permitting, which would have more additional public processes and public hearings and that sort of thing. So nothing has been decided, and even if it does decide, there'd be a lot more public process as well. I don't know if anybody has anything else to add there. Brian or Rachel, maybe.
I was going to say, and I'm certainly not an expert on how the political process works, but my understanding is the ultimate say is going to lie in the hands of taxpayers and of the residents of Wrentham. I believe, and if I'm speaking out of sorts here, Rachel, feel free to correct me. And if you don't know, then welcome to my club. But I believe this will be going, all the data will be presented to the select board. They will make either a recommendation one way, the other, or indifferently. But ultimately, I believe the last call is going to sit at a town meeting, which is, I mean, there's no greater chance for the residents to voice their opinion. You go to the town meeting and you vote, what you want, and what's the greater good will hopefully prevail. This has been a long process. I mean, it's been 2 years. I've been with the town 3, and actually the process started before I even got here. So it's been a long process, and a lot of questions have been raised. A lot of information has come out of this. And I mean, personally, I have no say. All I do is look at the facts that I'm given, and my judgment call is on how it's going to affect the water supply. So I give my opinion based on the facts I'm given. But in the end of the day, whether I want to keep that dam or I want to see it go is completely irrelevant. No one's going to listen to me. I'm not a voter of the town of Wrentham. It's going to be up to the people to decide that. And that is the truth. And whether it stays or goes, I live with it either way. I really don't have a preference one way or the other. I completely understand the people who enjoy it every day and look at it wanting to keep it. I'm sure if I lived on the lake, I would feel the same way. But in the end of the day, it's going to come up to the residents. So I would say engage your fellow residents, and explain to them why you think it's necessary to keep. And I think that's the best chance you have. I hope that helps a little bit. Am I basically on target with that, Rachel?
Yes. Yeah. Whether we decide to keep it, rebuild it, or do nothing. If we decide to rebuild it, it would probably be, a vote at town meeting to bond that money. And also if we decide to remove it, would be a vote at town meeting to bond that money. Either way. Yes, you may have heard, yes, there are grants available for those, but they would, for rebuilding dams, but not nearly, the grants that are out there would not cover half of the rebuild, the half of that cost. So that's also just something to keep in mind. But either way, it's a town meeting vote, and Brian is correct. Him and I do not have any say in this. We are not voters at town meeting. I do not live in Wrentham, nor does he. So we can't vote on this either. Whether it stays or goes, we have the data that we're given and we'll make recommendations. But at the end of the day, it's town meeting and, registered voters. So just make sure you're a registered voter and come to town meeting too. Yeah. So.
Yeah, just to extrapolate upon what Rachel said regarding the funding through grants. There are grants, absolutely, to rebuild dams, to replace them, and to remove them. The big problem for Wrentham and for a lot of tech communities is that the grants to remove dams are a lot easier to get for any level of a dam. The money to repair or replace, all dams are eligible to put in for them. There's only a limited pool of money. And all the dams that receive that money goes to the high hazard dams first, and that it's never gotten past the high hazard dams. I know I've had people contact me wanting me to put in grants for dams, and I've talked to the dam office, and they told me point blank, like, of course you can put in for it. The odds are infinitesimal to get one for a low hazard dam. There are high hazard dams being turned down for grants. Foxborough just replaced a dam that was 2 years in the making, getting the money, and it was a high hazard, basically just one step below imminent failure. It took them 2 years to get the money, and that was a high hazard dam. This is, unfortunately, it's considered a low hazard dam. So realistically, we're not going to see grant money for that. It's unfortunate, and some people have accused me of making that up in phone calls, and that's unfortunate as well. But the fact is, we're not going to see grant money for a low hazard dam. I'm just hoping to get grant money for Red Dam, which needs work as well, and that is a high hazard dam, and we're not guaranteed of getting that. So there will be a lot of questions at town meeting looking for money for dams coming up in the very near future, both of them. So that's the reality of where we're at. So, but again, whatever town meeting votes on, that's what I deal with, and I'm good either way, honestly. So, thank you all for your time and for listening.
So thank you, Brian. We have a couple more questions coming in. The other thing is there's high hazard, then there's also significant and then low. So there's another category in between the two also that can would be more competitive than a low hazard. Next question from Monica: is tonight's presentation available in the hard copy format? We will have this available on the town's website and CRWA's website. With respect to hard copy, Rachel, I don't know what the town policy is on that.
I typically don't have them. These types of things is just electronic available. So I guess you could come down and we could print out a copy for you. It's going to be in black and white. It's not going to be in color because color costs more for the town for ink.
Okay. Yeah, and we will send it out to the list, and it will be on the website. Zeus, you want to do next one or?
Certainly. Next question coming in from Monica: how long will dam removal take? Sort of getting at the time frame. I'm definitely not well positioned to take that one. I would assume Brian might be better, or maybe.
It's a good question.
Right.
I don't know. To short answer, I really don't know. It's a different process each time, depending on how much is going to be removed, to make it a safe, to make it safe, and the process of getting the money. I honestly don't know. That's a really good question.
I can kind of take a stab at that. I know for other projects, they've taken, 6 months to a year just for permitting. And then construction, I think, is in a couple of weeks. So it's very construction would be pretty short, but lead up to that, finding the funding, finding the design and permitting would probably take a few years. I know, Andy, you just unmuted.
Yeah, I was just going to offer my personal experience. I've done a number of dam removals, feasibility and deconstruction design. Like you said, Robert, one of the big drivers is getting the funding in order and getting the permits. Permits can take better part of a year, depending on the complexity of the dam and the area and the permits you need to pull. But in my experience, the short ones of a dam like this, the short ones usually 18 to 24 months. We've also worked on dam removals that took 8 to 10 years. Just going through all the feasibility studies and wanting to look at this, wanting to look at that. So it can be a lengthy process, or it can be a year and a half, 2 years.
So you want to do the next one, or I can read it? I'll read the next one. From Kelly Van Roon: what about negative ecological effects of dam removal? What about the fact that there is a small benefit of water that can help up to 30% increases to town water from ecological engineer Dr. Shane Wang from CL Claw Engineering, who has shown the water source benefit to town if it's removed? Then we lose this water source. I think we addressed that environmental partners did not find any negative impacts to the water supply. And as Ryan says, the water comes from a large aquifer, which includes Lake Pearl and Lake Archer. And negative ecological effects from dam removal, that's a very common question. And we see actually the opposite. It's very good ecologically. When you remove the dam, it's immediate benefits for water quality, immediate benefits for fish passage and wildlife passage. But it is it's a common question and concern from dam removal project to dam removal project. And like Andy was saying, it would have to go through extensive design and permitting through local, state, and federal regulation. So it would have extensive environmental review, go through MEPA, Massachusetts Environmental Policy Act, and other regulatory bodies, including the Conservation Commission in Wrentham. Andy, do you have anything to add?
And we nailed it.
Okay.
Right. And we have another question here. How will the water from Lake Pearl not spill over into the Old Mill Pond area?
Say that again.
Yeah, so the question is about whether or not water from Lake Pearl will spill over into the Old Mill Pond area. So I think there's a thought that somehow there will be spillover into that area from Lake Pearl.
So certainly Lake Pearl spillway discharges into the Eagle Dam impoundment now, and if Eagle Dam are removed, I imagine Lake Pearl will continue to discharge into the former impoundment area, and of course it would appear more riverine most of the time. During large flood events, as you saw in the flood modeling results, the peak water level in the Eagle Dam impoundment is expected to be within 0.1 to 0.6 feet, depending on the design storm. But during storm events as small as the 2-year event, the Eagle Dam impoundment is expected to be within 0.1 to 0.6 feet of its current level during those same storms. So during storms, I think the system will continue to function basically as it does now, similar water levels, and certainly downstream of the dam, I think we showed no change at all. But does that answer the question?
Yeah.
I think that, yeah, gets the question. I think the understanding it as a more riverine characteristic is crucial, so it would just kind of look a little different, but there still would be spill. Makes sense to me.
Yeah, I think that's part of the dam deconstruction as well, is making sure that that the channel that forms in the former impoundment is stable and appropriate. It's got the right slope, it's got the right sinuosity, and some of that happens naturally over the first the first 1, 2, 3 years. You see a lot of change in that channel. So some of that happens naturally, but some of it also needs to be engineered, right? So one common thing to do in your sort of designing deconstruction is to make sure that there's what's called grade control so when you take the dam out, the dam sort of prevents erosion from happening, for good or for bad. It starts a downstream channel of sediment, which has many negative repercussions, but when you take the dam out, the sediment wants to start moving downstream to sort of get back to its natural state. And sometimes, depending on the sediment in the impoundment and depending on the sediment that's in the substrate that was sort of there before the impoundment, depending on the characteristics of that impoundment, you might need to put in a small, sort of often a natural grade control structure, like stone blocks embedded in the channel to keep any sort of migrating erosion from going further upstream. And that's part of the design process for the deconstruction. That's pretty common.
Thank you.
The other thing I'd like to add is that the level of water in Lake Pearl would not change if you remove Eagle Dam. I just want to be totally clear. We had a question on Monday about this. Removing Eagle Dam would not change the level of Lake Pearl. Red Dam that Brian talked about is another regulated dam, which is upstream of Eagle Dam, and that regulates the water of Lake Pearl. And by removing Eagle Dam, you still have Red Dam, so the level at Lake Pearl would not change. So just want to be crystal clear for everybody here. All right, got another question. All right, got another great question from Monica. Will this cause mudslides and erosion to hilltop houses?
That's been studied.
Couldn't hear what you said, Andy.
I don't think that's been studied. That's slope stability, the potential for sediment transport, potential for increased erosion, whether it's temporary or permanent. Those are common topics studied during the feasibility phase of a dam removal.
I mean, is this about the houses on Pendleton? Because there's a bunch of vegetation on that slope. It is very steep slope over there, but there's a bunch of existing vegetation. So unless we're taking down all those trees, which that's, I mean, a portion of, you know, like where the docks are, that's on town property. And a little bit up there is town property, but we wouldn't be removing those trees that far up.
Generally, you find the floodplain is, right, we showed as 0.1 to 0.6 feet lower. So that also means it's narrower. So you're going to see the erosion zone will be narrower as well. There's potential. This is always a potential when you make a change like this for changes in erosion patterns, but it doesn't seem like it would be an issue here. But I certainly won't stick my neck out and say it definitely wouldn't. But it's something that could be studied in more detail, and that's generally for permitting. You need to build software called HECRAS, and there's other products like it, but generally you need to build a different type of hydraulic model. So the CRFM looked at sort of flood stage flooding impacts, but there's a lot more hydraulic impacts that usually need to be studied to support the permit applications for dam removal. And slope stability and erosion and sediment transport are among them. So definitely something that would need to be studied to support permitting.
Awesome. Any other questions? Any other questions? You know, we are hitting the hour. So we want to be respectful for people's time on Thursday. I'm gonna sneeze. Well, with that, I just want to thank everybody for coming. Unless anybody has any last. Oh, we got another one, Monica. Okay. One last question. We are already having erosion from building in the area. So what if this happens? Who would take responsibility?
I guess from what building in the area? I mean, it's town property. We haven't built anything. I mean, we've been doing the tests. I think, Brian, you guys have been doing the test pits, but I guess I don't understand the question. Where the existing erosion is coming from development. And I don't, as far as, I don't think, I haven't seen any permits come through for any new lots on that road. So I may be misunderstanding the question too.
And I think part of it, sort of what Andy was getting at, is the looking at erosion would be in the form of mill pond, generally looking at dam removal, not really the upper slopes, because those conditions really wouldn't be changing, more they'd be in the formal end of water, looking at scour and that sort of stuff. But I don't know. Yeah. Zeus, you were going to say something?
I mean, as I would just say, usually, right, if there was an error and there were some sort of erosion damage that was unforeseen or unexpected, generally you'd look to kind of redress that with the study process itself, wherever that had not gotten done properly, right? You know, and that would be something that could be identified. But I think the whole point that Andrew was trying to get across is that will be extensively studied as part of this in order for the permit to go through. So that's all I'll say to that.
Right. Well, thank you everybody for their questions. Unless I hear any more, we'll close it. Oh, sorry.
Kelly Van Ruin had sent me one directly. Oh,
okay.
I'm sorry, I replied directly back to her. That was silly. Her question was, Red Dam was redone approximately 20 years ago. Will the lowering of pond possibly cause a weakening to Red Dam?
That is a great question. So that also has not been studied and would have to be looked at, which goes into sort of what Andy was talking about, the HEC-RAS and sediment transport, that sort of thing, scour analysis. So all of that would have to be done in design and permitting phase to look at any impacts to Red Dam if Eagle Dam were to be removed. Oh, we're getting more questions.
This is the same one. I just sent it to everyone for your record.
Oh, thank you. But also, I would like to add, and I don't know if Brian has anything else to add, but Red Dam is being evaluated because it is in poor condition, so that there would be analysis looking at Red Dam specifically as well to look at the suitability and all of that. Okay. All right, great. Okay, Monica asked another question. If you are moving a lot of trees in the area, in the mud is what is left, then erosion is inevitable.
I would say oftentimes dam removals are accompanied with plantings or placing of woody debris to prevent too much uncontrolled movement of sediment at once. And as I say, Jurassic Park, nature finds a way. Nature repopulates those muddy areas very quickly, generally within a year, 1-2 growing seasons.
Robert, did you had shared, I think was it a time-lapse video of the Pepperell Dam removal? I thought that was very interesting because, again, I've never seen one happen. I could probably put that up on the website too, so people could take a look at that. But I thought that was actually very interesting to watch.
Yeah, that's a good point. Too bad we didn't watch that. Yeah, there's a video on the state's website that shows after they removed it and the plants coming back. One thing I want to note with regard to the trees is that would have to be part of design and permitting to make sure that there's no erosion. Like the local wetlands permitting, the state wetlands permitting, and federal regulations all have requirements on erosion. It's a big part of all of the permitting, whether you're repairing the dam or removing it. So that would definitely be addressed in those concerns. Because and there's also, because Eagle Dam, Impoundment, Lake Pearl, and downstream of Eagle Dam have priority habitat for species, natural heritage is going to be involved in that, and they have jurisdiction of that and will be concerned about any erosion in either scenario. Other thing I want to highlight too, trees will have to be removed in either scenario. More trees would have to be removed in dam repair scenario, because like I was explaining, that whole earthen embankment would have to be clear of trees and vegetation. Not that there wouldn't be erosion controls and grass planted on there, but it'd be different than what it is today. It would not be a tree-lined embankment. It would be like a big open grass earthen dam with the spillway, and then probably riprap on the upstream slope along the pond. So it would be different in either scenario. Trees would be removed in either scenario. Likely more trees in the dam repair scenario. So just wanted to be clear on that. Big picture wise.
Direct message from Lisa. Just a comment. We are already experiencing severe erosion.
Comment noted. Thank you, Lisa, for that.
It's good to know that that's occurring with Dam Inn as well. Good to know.
Yep. Oh, another question.
No, it's just me.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
No problem. All right. Well, it's 8:11, and I want to be respectful of everybody's time. Thank you all for your. Oh, great. Oh, we got another question, Kelly. Kelly Van Roon, can you please send us the time-lapse video, because I wonder how long it's going to smell. Yeah, we can definitely send a time-lapse video, and that's a great question, and it's a very common concern. Very commonly in dam removal, people are concerned that it's going to be a mud pit for years and it's going to stink. And honestly, it's not. From what I've seen in other places, it can be an earthy smell sometimes for a few months, but it's not going to be a mud pit for years, and it's not going to be like very smelly like the ocean or that sort of thing, like mud flats you see at low tide. But yeah, good question. And I definitely recommend, there will be more dam removals going on in the state. And I recommend you can go to the sites and see them in person. And it's really, I find them cool places. They got nice trails and that sort of thing. So we can definitely add places that people can visit and do some field trips to check out. And I know that they're going to be removing some dams in other towns this summer too. All right. Thank you. All right. With that, I don't see any more questions. I want to thank everybody else for their time. Obviously, coming on a Thursday night to listen to about the different options and to hear concerns. We definitely respect your time, and thank you all for coming. I know there's a lot of other great things you can do on a Thursday night, but to spend time with us was really awesome. And I appreciate you all asking your good questions and doing your due diligence. It's really going to help the process and make sure that we give the most information to the town and to the residents to make the decision that will make most sense for the town. So just want to say thank you all again for your input, your time, and for your great questions. And like I said, please fill out the survey. Please ask more questions. Feel free to, like I said, send them to Rachel at the planning office for the team, and we will be posting all of the slides, all of the videos on the town website and CRWA's website, as well as the slides from tonight's meeting and the other meetings, and also be posting frequently asked questions. So with that, I'm gonna wrap it up. But thank you all for coming tonight. This was a very productive meeting, and thanks again.